Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another installment of Movie Battleground, a very special episode of Movie Battleground. This is, in fact, the 100th episode of Movie Battleground. And I have two great competitors today. But first, before we get to them, I want to introduce you to my esteemed panel of judges. I can't do this myself. I am your lead judge and host for the night, Joe Harrison. And with me is Sean Sandberg. Sean, do you have anything to say about this match?
I absolutely can't wait to judge this. I judged Ryan's last match, if I'm not mistaken, against Andy Wood. And I've never gotten to judge a match with Nazario before. I know exactly how knowledgeable the guy is, and it's one of those things I absolutely can't wait for this. I know it's going to be an absolute barn burner based off both their skill sets and their level of knowledge. It's going to be tremendous.
All right, good to hear, good to hear. And rounding out our panel of judges this evening is Troy Carhoning. Troy, do you have anything to say about this match?
I'm excited. With two milestones, 100 for you guys, but my first actually judging. I judge people in my everyday life, especially on the way to work. I honk the horn at so many people I hate, but I'm really looking forward to being able to judge people and be appreciated for it. So let's do it.
All right, good to hear. I like what I hear both. But before we get into this match, let's hear from both competitors on what they have to say about this match.
Well, Mr. VHS is back in the battleground, representing Blockbuster Video, making it great again like I promised.
Nazario, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, man, but Blockbuster Video was no longer relevant. Is no longer relevant, I should say.
Now, 1-on-1, and that gets me an invite to Battleground 100. So I'm pumped. I don't have to be nice anymore. I just got to be myself and win. Who am I playing? Ryan or Reagan? Oh. Who?
Although, if you want to say that you want to make Blockbuster Video great again, as in irrelevant, indisposable, or in this case, disposable to the point where nothing they put out is any good, then yeah, make Blockbuster great again. But so far as I'm concerned, in this match, in the 100th episode, you have no chance in hell of winning.
Oh, wait. Oh, Ryan. That's the guy that likes Man of Steel and nobody understands why. Wait, that's the wrong Ryan. Who?
I'm going to prove that I'm a threat in this league. That when people in the Movie Battleground see my name in brackets, in tournaments, in matches against even the best people in this league, you are going to see from this match, my fight against you, why I am to be considered a threat, why I am dangerous.
It doesn't matter who it is, because Mr. VHS is gonna destroy tonight. So, bring your A game, bring your B game, bring your F game, bring whatever you want. I'm still gonna beat you.
Nazario, good luck. You sure as hell are gonna need it. And to Andy, I'm coming for you. I'm gonna prove that our fight was you getting lucky. I'll see you soon.
The first question: what movie, upcoming or already released, is more likely to win Best Picture in 2020? And we will go to Ryan first for his answer for this question.
I guess when it comes to nominee or winner for Best Picture, we have to come down to exactly what would make it qualify for Best Picture. And for me, I think what would make it qualify is the story, if it's engaging enough for our audience, a well-rounded cast of actors in order to keep us entertained and to move us throughout the story. And I'm gonna keep coming back to this. It has to be a very good story in order to really bring a lot of attention to this movie. And so that's why I pick The Goldfinch. It's not released yet. It's an upcoming movie that's going to be released later on, somewhere between July or September. I don't have the exact release date, but it stars Ansel Elgort, who most people are familiar with from that The Fault in Our Stars and Nicole Kidman, and it's directed by John Crowley. Now he doesn't have a lot in his work, but he is most well known for the movie Brooklyn. But this movie is an adaptation from the Goldfinch novel, and it's about a child who experienced tragedy in his youth and for some reason he is going through a huge spiral in his adult years, but he finds himself being drawn towards a portrait of a goldfinch that was there the day that his mother was killed during a terrorist bombing. I'm going to stop myself here before I start rambling on.
All right, so we have Ryan's pick is the Goldfinch. Nazario, your time will begin whenever you start speaking.
When you think about movies that have been nominated for Best Picture, you look a little bit in history, and I think it's a pretty good chance that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is Quentin Tarantino's upcoming movie, it's probably going to be one of the films nominated next year. Several reasons. Tarantino is a proven director when it comes to Oscar. He has released 9, technically, basically 8 movies, and 3 of them have already been nominated for Best Picture. And the movie itself, it's a biopic, which the Academy also enjoys. They like to celebrate histories based on reality. And it's also a movie that celebrates and takes place in Hollywood, which is something else that they also enjoy doing very much. They have shown it before in other movies, which I will expand later. But I think it has enough cachet, enough basics, and enough star power to actually contend for next year.
All right. Good opening statements from both competitors. Ryan once again going with the Goldfinch, and Nazario going with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now it is time for the open debate. Time will begin whenever one of you starts talking.
I think it's pretty clear that Hollywood likes to celebrate itself. There historically has been a lot of nomination for pictures that may or may not be as good as other movies contending that year, but that involved actually Hollywood, like A Star Is Born, the Barbra Streisand version. The Artist in 2011, the only reason that movie won Best Picture is because it celebrated cinema. And La La Land, that got really close, it's also a movie set in Hollywood that enjoys itself. Something else that Hollywood enjoys to do is stories based on some reality, and they are mixing the story of this famous actor that is a little burnout past his time with the Charles Manson story. So I think that's very interesting.
That can come as across as that can be measured both as a 50-50 when it comes to Hollywood celebrating itself. While, yeah, there are movies like The Artist and La La Land and A Star Is Born can be able to, show why Hollywood, what's good about Hollywood. At the same time, they can play as a negative as well. But what is focused, what the Oscars like to celebrate is stories in general. And what the Goldfinch is, it's a very good story. And also something that carries on with the Oscars is adaptations. Because one thing the Oscars like to celebrate is adaptations for screenplays. I mean, screenplays when it comes to original or adaptation, they like to celebrate writing, and the Goldfinch being from a Pulitzer Prize novel shows not only can Hollywood take a story that's been put in print, but if they can adapt it and bring it to the motion picture to tell a good 2-hour or an hour and a half linear story is something that Hollywood also likes to recognize in achievements. The Goldfinch,
yeah, but I think historically, it's a little broader movies that tend to win and that have more of a broader appeal. I think smaller indie movies like The Goldfinch end up usually, in your case, winning something like Best Adapted Screenplay, which is where I probably see this movie going, and maybe some acting category. I know that Nicole Kidman is in this movie. Is the only proven actor that you have going in your movie.
I actually have a few actors listed down. Other than Nicole Kidman, there's Ansel Elgort, who is in The Fault in Our Stars. We have Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things fame. There's Sarah Paulson.
None of those are Oscar quality performances, and that's what I'm saying. You have
unproven actors. You can't clarify what's an Oscar quality. I mean, even the best actors who have won Academy Awards don't always bring in the best quality of acting. I mean, for Once Upon a Time, Brad Pitt, whether you say or not, has not been able to bring out a lot of Oscar-calibrated acting in most of his recent films. Same argument can be said towards Leo DiCaprio after The Revenant.
Including producer, man. And DiCaprio has 6 too, and he actually has one as an actor. Margot Robbie also has one. And I'm not saying it's a guarantee, But if you put that together with a proven director like Quentin Tarantino that also has been nominated for Best Director, then you can actually get a more probable combination of elements that will give you what the Academy historically wants.
I
think
want to
your
jump
actors,
back to your thing.
I think they're very unproven, and I don't think they can carry this story without Nicole Kidman. That it's only in the movie for a short period.
One star doesn't always clarify that a film can be carried. A great supporting cast also can carry a movie, and the supporting cast it has in Finn Wolfhard, Sarah Paulson, Luke Wilson, and Jeffrey Wright can really bring out the meat of the story and also carry us throughout the middle of it. And to bring back your point where you said this movie could win adapted screenplay, movies that have been nominated for adapted screenplay also have a better likely chance of winning Best Picture. There has been plenty in the future. I mean, I don't want to ramble on with the list I have here, but
Go for it.
Oh crap! Okay,
you have original screenplay movies that win Best Picture all the time. The Artist was not an adapted movie. Neither was Birdman, which is amazing, and it won Best Picture.
No, you're right. I mean, that is a good point there, but still, the fact that these are adapted stories that can be able to tell something, and The Goldfinch is a story that can get us. It deals with tragedy. It deals with the emotional coming of age story. And of course, one thing the Academy Awards always nominate, no matter what, other than biopics, is drama movies. And The Goldfinch is a drama movie, if you can tell from the trailer. I mean, It might come out a little artsy, but even the Academy loves to promote artsy movies.
If you're going to go with the artsy movies, then there's a lot of other options that you can go that are more proven than The Goldfinch, with a director that really doesn't have that much history. You could have gone with the Little Women adaptation by Greta Gerwig, or The King, that has Robert Pattinson, Joel Edgerton, and Timothée Chalamet in it. That is a better.
Why would you want to pick Quentin Tarantino then? Because Quentin, as much as entertaining his movies are, ultimately none of his movies are nominated.
Time. We will be going into closing arguments. Ryan, you will have up to 60 seconds whenever you start speaking.
When it comes to Best Picture nominated films or films that have won Best Picture, it does more than it. All the categories are amongst more than just directing and casting and the screenplay it's adapted from. It also has to do with the cinematography, which is a very important aspect of it. And for The Goldfinch, it has the cinematographer, Roger Deakins, who has a lot of credit movies under his belt. Blade Runner 2049, The Shawshank Redemption, No Country for Old Men, to name a few. And ultimately, like I said, it has a very linear story, and it being an adaptation brought from a book to a film brings more acclaim to it, because then you'll be able to it gathers more eyes to this movie, because when it is adapted from something that's already been acclaimed outside by other critics, it just brings more attention to it, which is why even if it's more likely to win, I still believe it is a strong contender to be nominated for the Academy to recognize.
All right, good closing from Ryan. Nazario, your time will begin whenever you start speaking.
I don't think being adapted from a story is any kind of guarantee. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was an adaptation. The Girl on the Train was an adaptation. Gone Girl was an adaptation. The Room was an adaptation. The Room, just not The Room, was an adaptation. Those movies are all come from books, and they have varying degrees of quality, but none of them are Best Picture winners. You went with a small indie film when there were other better choices in the table. Like I said, Little Women by Gerwig or The King. And you are picking a movie that is carried by young, unproven actors like Finn Wolfhard and Ansel Elgort. And I think you went with low probabilities. You might get like a supporting role nomination or maybe an adapted screenplay, but definitely not the Best Picture. Tarantino has 3 of his 9 movies they're nominated for Best Picture. He's an Oscar-nominated screenplay writer. He has 3 of the biggest stars right now carrying his movie, and 2 of them are very recognized as acting awards. And the movie celebrates Hollywood, celebrates history. It takes a real story and gives it a new spin. And as entertaining as Tarantino is, his movies always have weight.
Time.
He has
All right, good arguments by both sides. So we will get right into the judging. First, I'm going to go to Sean with his decision. Sean, what were your thoughts on this match, and who are you giving your point to?
I thought that Ryan brought up some really good points on what makes The Goldfinch a compelling story. That being said, a compelling story does not necessarily mean that it's going to be Oscar nominated. I thought Nazario in the opening argument argument, bringing up not only the pedigree, but the fact that there's a lot of biopic love, the fact that the Oscars love movies about Hollywood, and he gave reasons why the Academy would genuinely choose it. Then he hit on Hollywood narcissism, like he expanded upon it in the second round. But Ryan came back with the fact that stories are celebrated. The only thing that I think really sold me like more so on Nazario's argument was the fact that Tarantino's consistency would lead to the probability of not only a nomination but a win. I thought that was the real linchpin of his argument that really carried him on to getting the point. Also, just as a quick aside, The Disaster Artist was adapted from the Greg Sestero book.
I made the artist, the 2011 artist black and white film.
Oh, okay. Okay, The Artist. Sorry, I thought you said The Disaster Artist. My bad. Also, Tarantino has 2 wins at the Oscars. And Brian, I take umbrage with the fact that you didn't bring up the fact that Roger Deakins also was the cinematographer for Sicario.
All right. All right, that is one vote for Nazario. We will now go to Troy with his decision. Troy, what were your thoughts on this round, and who gets your point?
I think there were lots of good arguments. Nazario started out strong, talking about Quentin Tarantino already having 3 out of 9 of his movies not having nods. Pointed out Hollywood really likes itself, but then I thought Ryan kind of took over in the middle. He pointed out not only does Hollywood like itself, but it likes adaptations, written stories, likes really drama and artsy type movies. But I think Nazario gave more examples. Hollywood likes itself, like in Star Is Born, The Artist, and La La Land. Ryan countered, but didn't really have as much back it up. Good point having a supporting cast about Ansel Elgort, Finn Wolfhard, and all the others, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has that as well, so it doesn't really help the Goldfinch argument. And I think just Nazario had the strongest argument. Quentin Tarantino's pedigree, previous experience winning, and getting the nominations really makes him the most likely winner over the smaller indie pick. So I gotta go Nazario. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
All right. And with that, Nazario gets the point. And with that, let's get right into the next question. And the next question is, what is the worst action sequence in a Claude Van Damme movie? And we are going to go to Nazario first for this one. Nazario, your opening will begin, your 90 seconds, whenever you start speaking.
There's a vast selection to choose from here. But I think that Van Damme made his name on hand-to-hand combat. And as goofy and dated as some of his movies can get, I think this is still something that has some value for people. So when he strays for that, and he just goes for the straight-up goofy, that's when it becomes a problem. And that is why I'm choosing the ending of the movie Double Impact, which, fun fact, was called The Colony here for some reason. And because it's an insane thing. I mean, it takes place in a Roman Coliseum because Stavros, the bad guy, kidnapped Van Damme's newborn son from the hospital like an hour earlier and took the baby there. Also filled the whole place with minefields and wants to fight Van Damme at the same time that he wants to release a tiger. It stops being an entertaining fight and it just starts being a thing about what else can we throw here. I was waiting for the sink, but it never got there. So that's the worst one.
All right, Nazario's going with the Coliseum fight from Double Impact. Ryan, tell us your choice, and your time will begin whenever you start talking.
One thing about Jean-Claude Van Damme is that all of his movies, they all have a certain taste, a style or a taste to them. So it's kind of hard to pick which one is terrible, or at least the worst. But for me, there's one movie amongst Jean-Claude Van Damme's that I personally like, but when I look at the ending scene of this, it turns the movie to what would have been good into a disappointment, and that is the barn fight scene from Universal Soldier. Throughout the start of this movie, where Jean-Claude's character is a brainwashed soldier who was brought back from the dead from Vietnam, and throughout the film, he is trying to regain his memory while trying to outsmart and evade the military installment that had brought him back from the dead. And throughout that time, it does a good job of trying to show how smart his character is, or how how he uses his wits to outsmart the military. And when he gets tough to fight, he fights. That's why when it came to this final scene between him and Dolph Lundgren's character, who's also in the movie, it's nothing more than just a very slow, dragged out fight to where Jean-Claude doesn't put much of a fight in this movie. You're expecting him to at least have a back and forth, but instead it's just he's getting his ass kicked over and over again until the last second he comes out on top. And when it comes to this for the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, it's a disappointment. Is why I picked this one.
Time. All right. Two great choices on what are some bad fights. And so I'm excited to see what this debate will have. And your guys' 5 minutes will begin whenever one of you starts talking.
To draw you back on Double Impact for a moment, Double Impact, you say it comes off goofy. Well, that's because the world they make this world to be goofy. I mean, for Christ's sakes, they cast Dennis Rodman in this movie. They knew they weren't trying to win any favors here. They wanted to make this as entertaining as possible. But when it comes to the Coliseum, the whole thing was that Jean-Claude's character built up to be the deadliest fighter. Stavros, he sets up all these traps to throw him off his game to at least get a leg up on him. At least it shows that the antagonist in this movie, he's trying to distract Jean-Claude. He's trying to get him off of his feet to where he can beat him. For Christ's sakes, in Universal Soldier,
we're talking about the worst. We're talking about the worst sequence, not the worst movie. Most of his movies are bad, and the fact that the rest of the movie is goofy doesn't excuse the fact that this is one of the stupidest endings that you can think of. I mean, the guy takes off his shirt, he gets bare chested, and he challenges basically Van Damme to fight him in a minefield. And then they slowly try to make good looking like flying kicks and shit between the explosive while not trying to explode. And in the middle of it, he decides to release a tiger because I guess that ups the game. And then
that's what I'm saying. He's trying to distract Jean-Claude's character. This movie exploits a lot of action cliches.
Going on. Then Dennis Rodman comes, save the baby, and for no reason other than what he believes is going to give Van Damme a leg up, he starts moving up the signals for the minefield. So accidentally, he steps on a minefield. I mean, what are the probabilities that you don't kill your own friend with it? And honestly, you go.
It wasn't accident. I mean, it wasn't meant to be accidental. He moved those. I'm not going to try to merit the logic on this. The thing with Universal Soldier is the reason why it's bad is, like I said, it is nothing but a slow drag fight. Dolph Lundgren, all he does is that he talks, hits Van Damme, talks, hits Van Damme. I mean, it exploits the biggest cliche in movies, a villain monologuing with Jean-Claude just sitting there, lying in the mud in the rain, while the femme fatale in this movie does nothing but just sit back and falls into the whole damsel in distress thing. Jean-Claude's character is portrayed as nothing but of a wimp in this scene, which is unfortunate because you're supposed to sympathize with him.
I don't think you're giving the movie enough credit. You have to remember that these soldiers died, and Dolph Lundgren already went crazy at the war, and they erased his mind. And the whole scene is a mirror scene from the beginning of the movie, with even the necklace full of ears, where he gets the girl and he's holding her the same way he was holding the hostage in Vietnam, and he's doing the same speech he's doing with Van Damme. It's actually a mirror image, and it has some dramatic value in the circle.
But they keep cutting back to flashbacks of Vietnam. We didn't need that. We got that in the beginning of the movie. And as I stated before, Jean-Claude is slowly remembering his life. Not all of it needs to flash back. With those flashbacks, it makes the scene, it makes it distracting, a little jarring to pay attention to the immediate danger.
This is a technique that is actually commonly used in action movies when they're trying to show flashbacks. My point here is that the scene itself has its weight, has a reason for existing, has some dramatic value, and if the fight after it is a little lackluster, you have to remember that Van Damme is the only trained fighter here. You're using Dolph Lundgren for his size, which is a big actor, but he's not supposed to be agile. And
the point is that Lundgren is a brute, and they can still do that. They've done that with they pit Van Damme being agile. They have done him against brute characters. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the Bloodsport against Bolo, double team against Bolo. at least with Double Impact, I can give it merit that, like what you said, that Universal Soldier has weight to it.
1 minute
Double
warning.
Impact is the same. Double Impact is the same because there's a baby that's in danger. There's a minefield laced apart. Like I said, all of this is there to distract Jean-Claude Van Damme and us as
And the audience,
audiences.
apparently, because it
Well,
distracts
yes,
us from thinking this is
distract
a
us.
realistic movie. My point is here that in the end, you have a dramatic scene that has some value, and it follows by a disappointing fight, but it doesn't ruin a movie that it was not as bad as to begin with. And mine, yeah, it's a piece of crap movie the whole way through, but that ending just put it to the next level, because not even do they explode the Coliseum, kill the tiger, kill Stavros, but they survive. You know how? Hiding behind a Coke machine, because yeah, that withstands a fireball. That is the question. That is what is the excuse for this? It's just the worst sequence of events ever put to film in a Van Damme film.
This is not as different than any action movie using a product placement.
That is time. Time, guys. Time.
Okay.
All right. Solid match. Solid between both guys. We are going to go to Nazario first with his closing argument.
I don't think the barn fight scene is close to being one of the worst. It's not goofy enough to be funnily bad like one of the earlier Van Damme movies. It's a little boring, but I don't think it ruins the flow of the movie. It has some dramatic value because it circles and mirrors the beginning of the film, and it's a psychological thing touching with the Dolph Lundgren character and the Van Damme character. My scene has half-naked Stavros fighting in a pit with a baby that is just born in a minefield with a tiger, with Van Damme, with a camera that spins 360 degrees nonstop for no reason, and an explosion that kills everybody except the ones hiding behind a Coke machine. Which it just, I don't understand how this could anybody defend as being fun. It's not, because bad filmmaking is not fun.
All right. That was a good closing from Nazario. We will now go to Ryan with his closing argument. Ryan, your minute will begin whenever you start talking, my friend.
Double Impact knew from the start that this was not going to be a serious movie, especially when you cast Dennis Rodman. So they do their best to exploit every action movie cliche. And as ridiculous as it might look, it knew what it was going for. Universal Soldier, on the other hand, it, like my opponent said, it was a dramatic film going from beginning. And with these action moments like spurt in between, the whole movie was setting up Jean-Claude's character as witty and as agile. But when we get to the barn scene, everything comes down to a close. Yes, it's supposed to be a mirror of their encounter in Vietnam. The problem is that the director is doing flashes back and forth between the fight and their deaths in Vietnam, which we didn't need because we already got that. Not only does he not think we remember the whole point of this movie, they keep hammering back into us again. He keeps splattering it back at us over and over again with flashes. Jean-Claude, and there have been better fights, action sequences where Jean-Claude.
Time, my friend. Time. All right. Great round from both competitors. We are now getting to the judging. First, we will go to Troy, and we will hear from him first. Troy, what are your thoughts on this round, and who is getting your point?
I thought it boiled down to two basic arguments. That Nazario's big problem with the amphitheater fight scene is that it's ridiculous. Ryan's problem with the barn fight scene is that it's lame. The barn fight scene being lame, that sounds pretty disappointing. If you have a movie that's set up to be dramatic, like Nazario agreed, it's supposed to be dramatic. There's some other fight scene parts, but didn't really have a good ending versus Nazario's. Definitely sounded ridiculous. Nothing wrong with that. Ridiculous. Flying kicks and explosions and a tiger. But I got to be honest, that sounds like it makes a pretty good fight action sequence. Not Van Damme fight scenes, but action sequence with explosions and a tiger and a minefield and a baby and at the Coliseum sounds pretty good. Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme having a crappy fight scene at the end of a movie, that sounds pretty disappointing and a bad action sequence. So Ryan got my point for that one with a lame duck fight scene.
All right. And now I will chime in with my thoughts next. Much like Troy, I do have to agree with him. Nazario, while bringing up the ridiculousness of the fight scene, that actually to me would make it more of an entertaining fight. But with Ryan bringing up how it was boring, there how it really wasn't much to it, and Dolph Lundgren was there just for size, and it wasn't really and it wasn't really just kind of to have this dramatic weight that it needed. So for that reason, Ryan is going to be getting my point for this round. And with that, Ryan takes the point. Let's get into question 3, which is Robert Pattinson has been recently announced as the Batman, but if he wasn't cast as Batman, what superhero or supervillain should Robert Pattinson play? We will be going to Ryan first. Ryan, who is your choice? And give us your opening, and your minute 30 will begin whenever you start speaking.
I want to start mine with a quote from a comic panel from the Green Lantern Guy Gardner. He was smarter than bats, although nobody ever noticed. And this is reference to Ted Kord, Blue Beetle. Now, Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, he was, and I'm going to say stress, he is a legacy character. He inherited the mantle from the first Blue Beetle, but his name was Dan. And the thing with Ted was, similar to Batman, Ted used science. He used gadgets in order to fight crime. The difference is that he was more of a hero that focused not just on science, but he was also very charming. He focused on business too. He understood that when it came to crime fighting and at least preparation for the future, science and business was going to be a major important, which is why he has some similarities to Bruce Wayne. He's an entrepreneur, he's a CEO, he's a philanthropist, but also at the same time, he understood the responsibilities of his position, which is why, as a legacy character, he understood that his role was something to be upheld as a persona to the public. And also, when it's passed down to the next Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes, Jaime also has someone else to look up to. So there's a lot to get in with Ted Kord here, so I'm going to stop right now.
All right. Good opening from Ryan. Now, let's hear Nazario's pick and hear his opening thoughts. Nazario, your time will start whenever you begin talking.
I think you have to go with kind of the strengths that the actor has demonstrated before. And even though most people know Robert Pattinson only for the Twilight movies, I think he has proven with a couple of his later indie movies that he actually has more range. In a movie like Good Time, he shows that he can actually be kind of a bad guy. And that helps when you want to take a role which is a little darker, which is why I'm choosing Constantine. Constantine is a warlock, a blue-collar warlock, and a cult detective. And he's also very cynic, very deadpan and brooding. But in the end, he believes himself to be a good person. And even though he kind of portrays himself like an asshole most of the time, he still wants to do some good with his life. He wants his life to be meaningful. And I think this is kind of a character that has already been proven that can work. It already had a movie with Keanu Reeves that could fail to start a franchise, but the character was brought back in TV, and he has played a big role in several of the Arrowverse shows. And I think it's a good opportunity for a new franchise to expand.
All right, so we have Ted Kord, the Blue Beetle, versus Constantine on who Robert Pattinson should play if he wasn't already Batman. Two really interesting, cool choices. Let's see how this goes in their open debate. Your 5 minutes will begin whenever one of you starts talking.
As I stated from my opening that Ted Kord is a legacy character, I would suggest that the reason why Robert Pattinson can play this is because we can cast actors. We can cast an actor to play the first incarnation of the Blue Beetle. So with this film that's ever pitched out, we can have a focus on Ted's relationship with the previous Blue Beetle, which in the comics was his archaeology professor. So having that kind of relationship there definitely gives us into a mindset of a young Ted Kord before he becomes Blue Beetle. Constantine is a good choice, but
I believe you like this character personally. I'm not sure if it's because it fits Robert Pattinson. I think it's just because it's the version of the Blue Beetle that you enjoy most. But it's very difficult to create. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to create legacy characters like as a starting point. You have a previous Blue Beetle, which is the original, and you have a later Blue Beetle, who's the actual Blue Beetle currently, that actually has alien superpowers and is more visually stunning. If you're going to make a Blue Beetle movie, you probably go with Jaime Reyes and the alien Scarab that has powers, and it's more engaging because what you're selling me...
Oh, no, keep going. Well, no, this is why I chose Ted Kord, because he has possession of that scarab, but he chooses not to use it. While his previous incarnation, his mentor used the scarab, and just like Jaime, he's using the scarab too. Ted is using his wits and his physical presence and his abilities in order to be a hero.
I think you have a technicality issue there, because the fact that the Scarab was an alien Scarab with powers actually was something retcon when they started the Jamie Reyes version. When it was just the Ted Kord version, it was just basically, like you said, another version of Batman without brooding and without the darkness. But like you said, also in that level, he's a genius, he's an athlete, he has advanced equipment, he's a skilled spy. Yes, we already have Batman. He's more enduring character. He has more resources because he's a billionaire. So why do we need Ted Kord? Bring me the more exciting version of the Blue Beetle.
We need Ted Kord because we need to show that there are other types of people who can be scientific geniuses and who can be super skilled and super agile, who are not Batman. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the big thing with Arrow is that he's constantly being mirrored to Batman. And with Constantine, sure, he is a good pick, though. But the problem is, we already have a good actor for that, and that's Matt Ryan. He's doing a fantastic job portraying that character. And many people are wanting him to be in a big screen adaptation of that character.
Yeah, but that's just not going to happen. That's why we have Ezra Miller in the DCEU and not Grant Gustin, because TV is separate from movies, and it takes a different skill set. And I think actually you can really portray a dark, brooding Constantine with some good in his heart with Robert Pattinson, for the same reasons that he was cast as Batman, because he has that heavy soul that he can portray in his acting job. And I think Constantine, which is a more likely option than a Blue Beetle movie at this point, can actually be like a starting point for a new open movie universe, because it's opened the door for the darker side of the mythology with Justice League Dark, which is what the film studios actually want these days, because then you can introduce Satana movie, Jason Blood, Etrigan the Demon, the Deadman, maybe even Swamp Thing in the big screen, and then do a team up movie with Rison as Constantine in the center.
You want to talk about team up? One thing that Blue Beetle is definitely being regarded. I mean, one thing Blue Beetle is always connected to is Booster Gold, and that is a duo that Hollywood has tried to adapt into the big screen, because these two balance each other out. We can do a great movie regarding these two, how they have an uneasy relationship at first, but then slowly they develop this strong brotherhood. And along
1 minute warning,
Kord,
guys.
and along with Ted Kord, he also has associations outside of his own persona. He has supplied his own personal resources with his Kord Industries to the Birds of Prey, to the Outsiders, to Justice League International. He's even been he has also been a alternate member of the Justice League. He is regarded as someone with a strong
responsibility. This character, I think it would work in a kind of Batman Beyond type movie. If you tell me that you get an older character playing Ted Kord, movie starring Jamie Reyes, where you have the sci-fi, you have the powers, you have the thing, and you can use him as the older guy who's trying to guide him in a good line, that would be a more interesting movie. That would be a movie maybe you can sell to a studio. But that wouldn't be Robert Pattinson. That would be probably a very older person, like Clint Eastwood, for example.
You don't think Robert Pattinson can do comedy?
It would actually be more like a like an Ant-Man movie, but you wouldn't have Robert Pattinson playing.
Time, guys, time. That is time. But just for a reminder, this is both your guys' last chance to use your minute extension if you so choose in your closing arguments. Ryan has opted not to, so Ryan,
actually,
your minute will be.
I changed my mind. I will do it. Since I got cut off from my last closing, I will take that minute.
All right. So, Ryan, your 2-minute closing will begin whenever you start speaking.
Blue Beetle is a character that definitely needs to be brought into, that needs to be adapted to the silver screen, mainly because not just the fact that he's a legacy character, but Blue Beetle can touch on different time periods because there are 3 different people. So just in case if we can use Ted Kord to introduce us to Blue Beetle, we can use Ted Kord to introduce us to Booster Gold, to introduce us into a world that has a lighter tone out of the DC movies that we have gotten recently. And Robert Pattinson, I believe he is a good choice for this because he is somebody who I think can give this character, he's ruggedly handsome, he does have a great smile, and from some of the movies I've seen, he does have a slight sense of humor, which I think he can bring to the Blue Beetle. And also, as I said, he can introduce us to Booster Gold, which is another character I think should be adapted to movies because this talks about time travel. And Blue Beetle being a science character, we can finally start getting some sci-fi stories into comic books. To where comic books doesn't have to be all about superheroes in general. We can intertwine some sci-fi, some fantasy, really start getting some meat into the genre. So far has been mainly strictly just fantasy. But also at the same time, like I mentioned before, he has a strong sense of responsibility. He is a strong character. He cares for the people he works with. He has a deep bond, not just with Booster Gold and Jaime Reyes, but also with other Justice League members. He forms the Justice League International with other DC superheroes that's associated with the Justice League. I mean, we don't have to focus on the main continuity of superheroes.
All right. That's closing. We will now go to Nazario. Nazario, your minute will begin whenever you start talking, unless you choose to extend.
Yeah, do it. I might not use it all, but better have it. So 2 minutes then, right?
All right. Yep, your 2 minutes will begin whenever you start talking.
I think Robert Pattinson at Constantine is a sure thing. He has the brooding look. He has the appealing look. He has to play an asshole with a heart of gold. I think he has proven with Good Time and even movies like The Rover that he has the acting show that it takes to get there. I think it's something new. It's a new direction for superhero movies because they have been trying to branch out. It's like the X-Men movies are trying to go with the New Mutants, if that ever gets released, into the horror realm. I think this opens wide open to the horror realm. You can bring all the darker mythology with the demons and the incantations. You can bring in Etrigan, you can bring in Swamp Thing, Satana, and make it a very interesting thing. And then make even a team-up movie of the Justice League's Dark, which is just a big thing, led by this character with Robert Pattinson. I don't understand why you picked that version of the Blue Beetle. I'm still trying to figure that out. You even said it yourself. He's the one nobody ever noticed. It was the first thing you mentioned in your line. And how can you sell a movie of somebody that nobody really knows without establishing some sort of reference first? And I would have gone with the original Blue Beetle or the current Blue Beetle, which is probably the one that eventually will get into a movie because he has power. He has his ethnic. His Jaime Reyes is a Latino. It's a new, more attractive version of the character. I don't know. It's like trying to make a Robin solo movie and not doing with the current one, Damian Wayans, or the original Dick Grayson, just going with Tim Drake. And there's a way to make that movie work. They did it in Ant-Man, but if you do it, then you have to have an older character training the younger one, like you were saying, because that is the version that will carry the franchise. The character himself, which I think this is the thing. I think you like this version of the character very much, which I understand, because it's basically Batman without being a dark asshole. So yeah, he may be a good Batman, but we already have Batman, and Batman have infinite resources, which makes him more efficient and better.
All right, that is actually time. All right, great match, great arguments on both sides. I will be going first, and oh boy, this was a hard-fought match on both sides. But at the end of the day, Nazario gave me more reasons on why Robert Pattinson would fit the character of Constantine better when it came with his acting chops and his performance in Good Time and acting pedigree. Ryan, while you gave me really good on how Ted Kord is interesting as a character, for me, you really never really tied it back into how that would really work with Robert Pattinson as an actor. So for those reasons, I'm going to give my point to Nazario, and we will now go to Sean with his thoughts on the match and who he is giving his points to. Take it away, Sean.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Like, here's the thing. I love Ted Kord, and if this argument was based on pitch me a movie, which would I rather see, a Constantine movie or a Ted Kord movie? I would rather watch the Ted Kord movie. But the argument was supposed to be about which role should Robert Pattinson play next. And so because of that, I only really got legitimate reasons for why Robert Pattinson would play the role of Constantine over Ted Kord. So I have to give my point to Nazario as well.
Right, Nazario gets the point. The score is Nazario 2, Ryan 1. We still have a match going on. We're going to go into our speed round questions. And the speed round is going to work like this. I will read the question twice. At that time, our competitors will say their name. Whoever I hear first will get the option to say their answer first. They will have a 2-second count to say their answer. If at that time they have not said their answer, it will go to their competitor who will give their answer. But whoever spoke first will still have to go first with their argument. And is that clear to the competitors?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And with that being said, let's go. And the speed round works like this. You will have a 30-second opening and a 15-second rebuttal. So here's our first speed round question. Besides Alice in Wonderland, which is the worst Disney live action movie?
Ryan, Beauty and the Beast.
All right. Ryan is going with Beauty and the Beast.
I'm going with Maleficent.
And Azario is going with Maleficent. All right. Ryan, you spoke first, so you will go first. And your 30 seconds will begin whenever you start speaking.
The live action version of Beauty and the Beast is nothing more than just a plain shot for shot remake of the cartoon, except it tries its best trying to make us sympathize with all the characters instead of trying to paint us a good story. And the problem with this whole story is that it was already mired in controversy with the whole, is LaBeouf gay? Is the Beast going to be a bastard? Is the Belle going to fall? Is the Stockholm Syndrome? This already had so many negatives going against it instead of trying to pitch itself a good movie going forward. Also, the fact that they put in more music numbers than shouldn't be needed.
Time. All right. We heard that open argument. And now we will go to Nazario. Nazario, your time will begin whenever you start speaking.
I think Maleficent started with the wrong concept. This movie was trying to bring Sleeping Beauty back into the 21st century, and they got a great actress to portray Maleficent, and everybody was excited about it. But then they decided to make her likable. They took one of the biggest, better villains of the Disney canon and made her a good girl. Yeah, she's supposed to be a little bad in the middle of the movie because she has to be Maleficent. She has to go to the beats of the movie of the Sleeping Beauty. But in the end, it turns out that she was just getting back at a jackass king that caught her wings. And that was her excuse.
Time. All right. We will now go to Ryan with his 15-second rebuttal / closing. Ryan, your 15 seconds begin whenever you start talking.
Maleficent at least was going with a different new story when it came to the character instead of Beauty and the Beast, which is pretty much telling the same story over and over again. Maleficent wanted something new. Sure, the character came off a little sympathetic, but it didn't change the fact that she still did bad things to bad people.
Time.
And no matter
time. All right, and now we will jump back to Nazario for his closing / rebuttal. Nazario, the floor is yours when your 15 seconds begin, whenever you start.
I don't think The Beauty and the Beast is a straight-up remake. Actually, they introduced new elements to try to explain some of the plot holes from the animated version, and that actually made it a little weird and different, and some people didn't expect it. They put a new singing version because that's what you do. Maleficent, it has to actually make the fairy stupid to make the story make sense because they
time, my friend. Time. All right. Great speed round. Great from both competitors. Let's go back around to the top. Sean, what are your thoughts on this round and who is going to be getting your point?
This one's actually really hard for me, to be honest with you. Because I think Nazario really hit on a very good point with it was the wrong concept. They did have a great actress, but they put her in the wrong situation. She's likable when she's not supposed to be, and that undermined the character. But I also think that Ryan kind of came back with a really good one with Maleficent, unlike Beauty and the Beast, was at least unique in the way that it was trying to tell its story, which kind of spoke to me a little bit. Shit. This is a really tricky one because it's half the argument is really good for one person, half the argument is really good for the other. Oh, oh. I think I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna go with Nazario just because of the fact that it was the wrong concept, and she's. I think the first half of the argument was really strong for him, but I will say this is by far the hardest argument for me
Yeah.
to judge, without a
I
doubt,
will-
of the whole match.
All right, that is one vote for Nazario, and we will now go to Troy with his thoughts. And Troy, who are you giving your point to for this round?
Well, I agree. It was definitely the hardest one to judge. I think because it was so quick, there wasn't as much material to judge on. Nazario agrees. Main concept was it was a bad concept. That was the main argument there, which is a bad thing. Ryan obviously pointed on the fact that it's basically just a shot-for-shot remake. They only focused on the sympathy and trying to get the characters across rather than making a whole good story. And he brought up the controversy surrounding it, which I don't think really apply. But Nazario didn't point out that the controversies really don't apply.
That's
And
true.
then I had a problem where, as Ryan pointed out, Maleficent was at least new. Beauty and the Beast is a remake. Nazario pointed out that, well, it's not fully a remake. They did try to take some additional liberties with explaining plot holes and added songs, which people didn't like. And people didn't like it. That means it was probably bad. So he kind of caught himself at the end there. So between that and not pointing out the controversy, I'm going Ryan. I think Ryan had a couple more points, and he didn't get his bad points counted as much. So my point goes to Ryan.
All right, so it comes down to me for deciding this round, and I agree with both of my colleagues that this was one of the hardest rounds I've ever had to judge, and I just heard a little bit more from Ryan on what was wrong with Beauty and the Beast as opposed to Nazario. His strongest point was that it was a bad concept, but Ryan was able to counter that with, well, it might be a bad concept, but at least it was new. This was a remake of a beloved movie that really didn't work that well. So Ryan gets my point. So we are all tied up now at 2 apiece.
Everyone's shooting from the hip, but Ryan got a few better shots off.
Yep.
He ducked and
And
dodged
now-
a couple times.
Yep.
Man.
We are now going
Oh my
to
God.
our final speed round question, which is, which of these two singers should get a biopic? Michael Jackson or Prince?
Ontario, Prince.
All right, Nazario will be going first with Prince. Ryan, that means you will be arguing for Michael Jackson. Nazario, your 30 seconds will start whenever you begin talking.
I think with all the information we have currently, the only feasible real option here is Prince. He was a very good artist. He had some very memorable music, and he even has some personal problems that actually become an interesting movie. Michael Jackson right now would be unfilmable because of all the things that have come out. I don't think you can sell a movie with him as the main star. It will be too heavy. You need to give some time for the story to develop and to learn more about the realities of things that may or may not have happened. And why would
Time, my friend. All right, Nazario with a strong opening for Prince. Ryan, let's see what you have to say with Michael Jackson, and your 30 seconds will begin whenever you start speaking.
Michael Jackson does have a lot of facets in his life that can either one of them can easily be adapted into a biopic. Let's just say we focus on only one part of Michael Jackson's life, and that is the culmination of the making of his album of Thriller to pitch as a biopic. The struggle he had to come off with from the Jackson 5 breakup to making the album, to the album's release. With Prince, he has already done semi-autobiographical movies. I mean, Purple Rain is almost pretty much a biopic in his own writing. And also, Prince, let's just say Mike has more meat.
Time. We will now go back to Nazario with his 15-second closing / rebuttal. Nazario, your time will begin whenever you start speaking.
I don't think that this qualifies it as an option. Ed Wood made Glenn or Glenda, which was basically his own story, and you could even make a good movie with that, with Johnny Depp. And Michael Jackson, even a little part of his life during to a movie, would celebrate his life, which I don't think is the right moment to do because of all the controversy around his life. I don't think you can pull the paper.
All right, Ryan, your 15 seconds will begin whenever you start speaking.
The big mistake of biopics is that they try to explain the artist's whole life. They don't have to. This biopic can mainly just focus on one subsection of Michael Jackson's life, pretty much him making the album a Thriller and the whole tour going on, and it can end there. Prince, he has too much in there.
Time, my friend. All right, we will now jump back to Nazario for his final 10 seconds, which will begin whenever he starts speaking.
You can explore the whole life of Prince. You can get an actor like Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, to play him and explore why he dropped his name and became a symbol, and all the things about the development of his whole life. Very interesting.
Time. All right, Ryan, your final 10 seconds for your final thoughts in this round. They will begin whenever you start talking.
Despite whatever your feelings are about Michael Jackson, he had influenced a huge generation of music fans coming down to all the way to this generation. And you can take someone like Donald Glover, who can also play Michael Jackson as well.
Time. And they were going for the throats. Each of them were in that fight. Let's go to Troy on his thoughts for this round and who he's giving his point to. Troy, the floor is yours, my friend.
I gotta be honest. I think this one was a slam dunk. This one was whoever yelled out the word Prince first, because the only way you can argue Michael is if you're bring up the controversy. Because whether you believe it or not, just you could not make a movie, even a limited movie. I think Ryan did a good job trying to argue around it, saying you can make it limited, maybe just do Thriller or like the Jackson 5, the Family Experience. But Nazario pointed out you can't get around with any movie celebrating their life, and you just couldn't do it with Michael at this point. Whether you believe it or not, there's just too much baggage. The slam dunk Prince. My vote goes Nazario.
All right. I will now go over to Sean with his thoughts for this match, his thoughts for this round, and who he's giving his point to.
I don't think it's impossible to argue for Michael Jackson to actually have a biopic made about him, especially because it's been done not on a wide release, but there have been TV films made about him, especially like right after his death, there was one that came out. So it's not impossible. But Nazario is correct in terms of a lot of what he's saying right now. It is kind of the wrong moment. So for that, I once again would have to give my point to Nazario. It's a recurring theme.
Andrew Winner with a final score of 3-2. Nazario, Mr. VHS, Montenegro. We will now talk to our competitors about this match. We will first go to our winner of this match, Nazario. Nazario, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's nice to be back on the winning side of the record. I think it's my first time actually on the winning side of the record because I lost my first match. So yeah, Ryan was very good. I felt that he had some good arguments. Luckily for me, he opened a couple of technicisms here and there when he deviated from the original questions, and you could actually catch him off guard a little bit with that. So that helped me out. I think I probably won this match earlier than I was given this match. Not being cocky or anything, just my personal opinion. I always say it at the end of the matches. I know when I have been beaten. Today, I don't think I was beaten, so I'm glad that the judges agree with that. And yeah, the last question was very, very heavy-handed. I'm really sorry it had to come down to that. But to be fair, we both stood silent for a long time before picking. So he could have picked Prince first too. I also think that there's a way that you can do a Michael Jackson version. I think it has been very smart the way they do the O.J. Simpson stories. Sometimes with having him in the background and focusing more on the people in his life, people around him. And if you try to make a movie like that without putting up front and center Michael Jackson, I think maybe you can analyze what is in reality a very complicated life of a guy who was a great artist, but at the same time probably not a very good human being. So all respect to Ryan, he did his best, and I'm just looking forward to the next one because Blockbuster's coming back, baby.
Now, is there anyone you would want to face next in your next Battlegrounds appearance? Do you have any calls for anyone?
Not really. Just step by step, getting up the ladder until facing the whatever champ is at that moment. Fingers crossed, Cody keeps holding on because I debated him once. I thought it was closer than I expected, or maybe he expected. So that would be an interesting match.
All right, and just quick for the fans, where can we find you around the internet? Do you have any plugs to give out?
Well, I don't have many original content, but I'm all around the trivia leagues. You can find me playing in Full Metal in teams with Blockbuster Video, and I'm also in Multiplex a lot and Confidential Cinema. If you want my handle, you can look this up. It's in most of the social networks, but I warn you, it's probably going to be in Spanish and mostly about toys.
All right. And Nazario, I am actually just getting an update. You are now 8th in the rankings. So how do you feel about that? Just being like you are 8th, you are in the top 10 now. You are 8th.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. Like I said, stepping up that ladder, looking at that champion in the end. Few more spots to go.
All right, and now to our unfortunate second place finisher in this match, Ryan. Ryan, you fought hard. How are you feeling after that match?
Just putting aside the last speed round question and this, oh my god, this match! I said to myself, I did not want another shutout victory. I did not want to lose 3-0 like I did against Andy. But I felt good in this match. Yeah, there were some questions that were hard. Honestly, I had like a notebook that was 5-6 pages of notes on research, and ultimately it just came down to me trying to make an argument or at least spin a narrative that I could believe in. But I have to admit, Nazario did a very good job. He definitely was keeping me focused. I spent more time focused on listening to his argument than focused on my notepad, or at least trying to do some shorthand notes and trying to, fight back against him. So he caught me up a couple of times, but I do have to admit, I would definitely love to play him again in the future. Maybe, it all depends on questions, honestly. I can't cherry pick my questions. I can't decide what I want to talk about. It's all about what I get and what's coming towards me. But I definitely do look forward. I mean, from my last Battleground match, I do feel like I'm getting better now. I'm focusing less on trying to have the unique questions and just more of going straightforward, picking the more common choices, despite despite what most of my friends tell me whenever I talk to them about this.
All right, and I actually have just gotten some updated information regarding you and your future in Battlegrounds. Ryan, you will be playing Matt Beer for a spot in the upcoming tournament. Matt is actually here with us.
Yep. Yeah. Oh crap. Okay, he's watched me argue. Now I have to find some of his matches.
Yeah, trust me, they're not exciting once you get past the third question. But here's the thing, I feel very confident. I think we're having a great match, but at the end, I think I'm gonna give you another knockout. So I make your record 1-3 with two losses and via knockout.
No, well, I think it's going to be more of like this. I'm going to take you to the speed round, okay? If I get a knockout on you, I think that's going to be an even bigger improvement on my abilities. But I believe I'm going to take you to the speed round there. I'm going to give you a fight.
Look, if you knock me out, I'm retiring right on the spot.
Oh,
come on.
Well, we already have.
And you're going to deny everyone else a chance to play?
Play me? I mean, we'll play other people. I mean, if they want a defeat, I can give them that. But at the end of the day,
Wow. What a way to end the 100th movie battleground match with some already smack talk for an upcoming match between Matt and Ryan. This has just been a fun match. Fun has been had all around. First, let's go. Let's get some final thoughts and some final plugs from our judges. Sean, do you have anything to plug? What are your feelings on this match, my friend?
I thought this was a very good match. I do feel terrible that anytime I've judged Ryan, I've gone against him literally every single time. It doesn't make me feel good because it doesn't actually reflect how good of a debater he actually is. I just think he's run into some really stiff competition over his last two matches. But overall, I don't think this is the end of the road for him, obviously, because he's going to be playing Matt, which I think that match is going to be amazing. And yeah, seeing Nazario climb the ladder a little bit more, that's going to be awesome to see. As far as where you can find me, you can find me at Sean Sandberg on both Twitter and Facebook. Period in between the Sean and the Sandberg.
All right, sounds good. Now let's go to our other judge for the night, Troy. Troy, final thoughts on this match, and where can we find you on the internet? Any plugs you have, sir?
I thought it was a great match. I was glad to be a part of it. Thanks for having me jump in at the last moment there. And yeah, I thought it was a well fought battle. I think Ryan really proved Nazario wrong. He shouldn't have been as confident as he was coming into it because that came down to a coin flip at the end. Like I said, I think whoever yelled out Prince would have had it. And apologies for stepping over Sean, but I've watched a couple battleground matches before, and I saw more than a few questions that in my opinion, judges judged depending on things that weren't in the argument. So when you started talking about that, I was like, no, not on my watch. We're keeping it honest. So apologies for stepping on you there, but thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be a part of the 100th match. So if you want to find me, say things online on Twitter, you can find me at the Merlot line. I'm not that funny and I don't tweet that often, but at the Merlot line if you want to find me.
All right. I have to agree with both of my fellow judges and the competitors. This was an amazing match. I'm glad that this match is going to be the 100th movie battleground match because we are going to be giving the fans a treat. This was an amazing match, and the fans, you guys have an amazing match that you guys are going to get to experience. And you can find me on the internet at Joe Hipsterson on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And with that being said, for myself, my fellow judges, the competitors, and all of us at Movie Battleground, good night, good evening, and good morning.